When my husband and I found out we were expecting our first child, we were overjoyed. After years of trying, countless doctor visits, and one heartbreak after another, the idea of finally holding a baby in our arms felt surreal. We threw ourselves into preparations, decorating the nursery, buying baby gear, and most importantly, picking the perfect name for our son. Naming him was no small task. We spent hours combing through baby name books and websites. After weeks of deliberation, we landed on a name that felt just right: Caleb James. Caleb was strong, timeless, and meaningful. James was a nod to my late father. It felt perfect. Naturally, we were excited to share our choice with our family. Most people were thrilled. My mom teared up when she heard we'd chosen James as the middle name. My in-laws smiled and congratulated us. But my sister-in-law, Megan, had a strange reaction. She plastered on a tight smile and muttered, "Oh, that's nice." Megan has always been competitive. She's my husband's younger sister, and she's had this habit of turning everything into a competition. When we bought our first house, she suddenly decided to buy one too, despite not being financially ready. When we got a dog, she got a more expensive purebred one. When I announced my pregnancy, she made a big show of trying for her own baby with her husband, despite having previously said she wanted to wait a few more years. At first, I chalked her reaction up to her usual competitiveness. Maybe she was upset that we were getting attention, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Fast forward a few months, and Megan announced her pregnancy. She and her husband, Tyler, were expecting a baby boy. We congratulated them wholeheartedly. I tried to put any lingering weirdness behind me because, after all, a new baby is a blessing. One evening, Megan called to say they'd chosen a name for their son. She sounded giddy as she revealed it: Caleb James. For a moment, I thought I misheard her. "What did you say?" I asked. "Caleb James," she repeated. "Isn't it perfect?" I'm not proud of what came next. My shock turned to anger, and I blurted out, "Megan, that's the name we chose for our son. You know that." Her tone shifted instantly. "Well, we like it too," she snapped. "And you don't own a name." I couldn't believe it. I tried to keep my voice calm. "Megan, it's not about owning the name. It's about respecting that we shared something personal with you, and now you're copying it," she scoffed. "You're being ridiculous. It's a common name. And besides, we're family. It'll be cute that the cousins share a name." My husband, Liam, was furious when I told him. He called Megan to confront her, but she doubled down. She accused us of trying to gatekeep names and said we were overreacting. She even threw in a jab about how it's not like you invented the name Caleb. Over the next few weeks, the tension in the family was palpable. Megan refused to budge, insisting that her son would also be named Caleb James. My in-laws tried to stay neutral, though I could tell they were uncomfortable with Megan's behavior. I felt robbed. Every time I imagined introducing my son, I now have to clarify, no, not Megan's Caleb. Our Caleb, the specialness of the name felt tarnished. As my due date approached, Liam and I had to make a tough decision: stick with Caleb James or choose a new name. It was heartbreaking, but ultimately, we decided to pick a different name. We didn't want the drama to overshadow our son's arrival. We chose Ethan James instead. When Ethan was born, all my anger and frustration melted away. Holding him in my arms, I realized that no stolen name could diminish the love I felt for him. He was ours, perfect in every way, but the story doesn't end there. A few months later, Megan gave birth to her son. True to her word, she named him Caleb James. At first, I tried to let it go. I focused on enjoying my time with Ethan and ignored Megan's occasional passive-aggressive comments about people who get too possessive over names. Then came Ethan's first birthday party. Megan and her family attended, and she made a point of loudly comparing our sons. "Isn't it funny how Caleb is already walking? Ethan will catch up eventually," she cooed. Liam had to physically steer me away before I said something I'd regret. The final straw came a few weeks later at a family gathering. Megan casually mentioned that she'd started calling her son CJ, short for Caleb James, my late father's initials. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That night, I poured my heart out to Liam. "I've tried to rise above this, but it feels like she's deliberately trying to hurt me." Liam nodded. "She is. But we don't have to play her game." We decided to set boundaries. We stopped engaging with Megan's drama and focused on our little family. If she made a snide comment, we ignored it. If she tried to compare the boys, we changed the subject. Slowly but surely, the power she held over us faded. Years have passed now. Ethan is a bright, kind-hearted boy who lights up our lives. Caleb, Megan's Caleb, is doing well too, though Megan's competitive streak hasn't dulled. She's moved on to comparing school achievements and extracurricular activities. Looking back, I'm grateful for the lessons this experience taught me. Names are important, but they don't define a person. What matters most is the love and care you pour into your child. And no amount of jealousy or pettiness can take that away. Yet, every so often, I catch myself wondering about Megan's motives. Was it jealousy? Was it her way of trying to one-up us? Or was it something deeper, an insecurity she's never been able to shake? After Caleb's first birthday, Megan started organizing family events more often. She'd invite us over for dinners or weekend brunches, insisting the cousins needed to bond. While I appreciated the gesture, I couldn't help but notice her subtle digs. If Ethan tried a new food, Caleb had already loved it for months. If Ethan learned a new word, Caleb had said it weeks earlier. These comparisons, though wrapped in sugar-coated smiles, still stung. One particular dinner stands out. Megan brought out a scrapbook she'd made for Caleb, filled with photos, milestones, and pages dedicated to the meaning behind his name. She made a big show of reading aloud about the biblical Caleb and how strong and brave he was. Liam squeezed my hand under the table as I fought to keep my expression neutral. Afterward, Liam's parents pulled me aside. My mother-in-law, who rarely took sides, said softly, "You've handled all of this with such grace. Don't let her behavior ruin your peace." It was a small validation, but it meant the world. Eventually, Megan's antics started backfiring. Her constant need to compare and compete alienated others in the family. At a holiday gathering, one of our cousins bluntly told her, "You know, Megan, kids don't need their parents to compete for them. They're individuals, not trophies." Megan turned red and laughed it off, but I noticed her dialing back the comparisons after that. Maybe she was finally starting to see how her behavior affected not just us, but her own relationships with the family.